absolutely opposed to animal cruelty. But for me, if I lived on Mars, those kinds of that kind of. What's the lab meat?
Take it there. Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's...
All right, so John Fetterman did a couple appearances with Bill Maher on Bill Maher's terribly named Club Random podcast, and also his main show where he did an interview. And some clips from both of these appearances have gone viral because of his Trump glazing, excusing of the ballroom, and other Trumpisms. But also in the actual Bill Maher show appearance, his horrible falling apart answer on something related to lab-grown meat or something, just something random that Bill Maher threw him, and he gave a terribly confused answer on. So Fetterman is not sounding great these days, but even, to the extent that he sounds coherent, he's carving out this position of being like the contrarian within the Democratic Party and, essentially being the most Republican of the Democrats, setting off this weird potential chain of events where they want him to flip parties. Trump has offered to help him and give him money and to support him if he switches parties. So he still claims that he's firmly in the Democratic camp, and on a lot of stuff like, LGBTQ issues and certain bedrock Democratic issues, he is still pretty firmly Democratic. But what it seems like his game is undermining the leverage that Democrats have in various situations, whether it's with a Trump appointee or with reopening the government or any of these political fights that have cropped up where Democrats are trying to exercise leverage against Trump. Fetterman kind of acts as the foil to that, much the same as Manchin did. So in that way, he's the kind of resident rotating villain at the moment, and pretty predictable, but also fascinating in his oafishness to observe in that role. So here's him talking to Bill Maher on the Club Random podcast.
Just do whatever.
Yeah, the things that he says aloud, the way he just voices his interior monologue, there is something not exactly psychologically normal about someone who just vomits their interior monologue, but it gives him a authenticity with people that no one else can possibly match. I saw his interview with Norah O'Donnell after the shooting, like the next day, and she quotes the assassin who called him a pedophile, Hitler, or whatever he called.
Yeah.
I mean, could any of the things be true? Yes, anything could be true, but to just go right to, it's the ballroom syndrome again. Let's just go right to the worst thing because we hate this guy. And that pissed him off a lot. I could see both sides. As a reporter, it is news. Also, it's giving access to the president from the terrorist, I would say, that's terrorism, assassination, nut. You're giving his message. Okay, you could make a case for either one, but his reaction immediately was to her, "You're a terrible person." And he didn't just think it. Like any politician, that's exactly what they're thinking. He just says it. If that's what's in his head, you're a horrible person. You're a disgrace. You're a horrible person. And it's like, it's at the same time horrifying and also it's kind of refreshing. It's shockingly the honesty. As someone who loves honesty and has made my career about it as much as I could, it is, there's some level of it where you tip your hat and you go, wow, total honesty.
The ultimate, the quiet piggy.
Right. Yeah.
That's the president of America.
No, that's
a quiet.
That's why I
mean, it's like all you can do is just,
But I know he's working very hard to get you, or isn't he trying now to get you to become a Republican?
I absolutely had to, actively participate in an election that I absolutely knew that we'd go down. After the assassination. And then after when Anderson Cooper asked Harris, so you think he's a fascist? Yeah, I do. And that means people that if he's a fascist, that must mean I must be a fascist too. And if you know and love a lot of people that have voted for him, I know they aren't fascist, and you kind of view.
I mean, there are things the Trump administration has done that resemble what fascist governments do. That doesn't make him a fascist. I said 10 years ago, before he won the first time, I thought this was a slow-moving coup, in the sense that he was never going to voluntarily give up power. And he still really didn't. The hero rises, and of course he goes down in the second act, and then he comes back in the third act. He doesn't then, relitigate the second act because you've already avenged it by becoming president again.
No,
but he's still obsessed with it.
It's one of the reasons
Right?
why I was eager to have a sit down where I'm like, I marveled at the most incredible political, turnaround ever. Like after January 6th, after impeached twice, and
Right.
and
all the trials.
The trials and everything, and to win, every swing state and the popular vote, the absolute kinds of a reversal, and it's like crazy, and that's why there's some things that they do I just don't understand. But and what's also on the other side, I've had Republican friends, in office say, they're like, our internals, you're more popular with our people than we are. How? And I don't understand that either. When I vote 93% like a Dem line, and I'm more popular with Republicans, I can't explain it. I truly don't, and I find myself in a strange place.
All right, so some pretty easy contradictions here, but they pretty much cover the scope of it. So Bill Maher's referencing the ballroom thing, because earlier in this conversation they had talked about how people freak out about the ballroom. What's the point of criticizing that? Which I understand to an extent, except I think the ballroom has become such a symbol of Trump's corruption in general, which obviously they glaze over that. They don't really get into that or any of the specifics of Trump's behavior, because it turns into this conversation about how Trump is refreshing in the things he's saying, and he's refreshingly honest, and he's just saying the things that are on his mind, which is true. I think it's important to acknowledge that that is the thing that people like about Trump. That is the appeal that he has, if you had to articulate it. Now, does him saying what's immediately in his mind mean he's telling the truth, or even that he's giving you an honest version of what he's thinking? No, it doesn't. And I think anyone who's honestly observed Trump knows that while he does just spit out whatever comes to him in any moment, he's also an expert at lying, pulling something completely out of his ass, and specifically the thing that guys like this continuously miss on purpose. Although Bill Maher is somebody who has been able to comment on this over the years, but certainly at this point it is incumbent on them to ignore the fact that Trump sort of fundamentally distorts reality. So part of what he's doing when he reflexively says what is, the first thing that comes to his mind, is he's saying the sort of juiciest thing that he can say, regardless of if it's true, regardless of if it's even prudent to say. But what it does is it allows him to kind of manipulate the conversation, because he's willing to say things that people in his situation wouldn't normally say. So that's really what they're praising about him. It's not the fact that he's honest, although that's what Bill Maher says about it. It's the fact that he's impressive in his ability to rhetorically manipulate. And that's true. Trump is impressive in his instinctual ability to do that. And then later when they get into this stuff about fascism, I think that really is what ties it together, because Fetterman says, oh, okay, this is an exaggeration to call him a fascist, and I just don't get why Democrats are doing that. Then Bill Maher points out that some of his behavior and his behavior of his administration is fascist, but that doesn't make him a fascist. And I truly don't understand that. It's an emerging thought process that I'm hearing from a few different corners, a few different sources in the UK, like Piers Morgan and those trigonometry guys. This theory that Trump is not necessarily a fascist, even if what he does is fascist, because it doesn't become fascist unless it's successful. So Trump, trying to do the coup at January 6th and not give up power, overturn the results of the election, is only not fascist because it didn't work. So the fact that Trump had fascist intent in that moment isn't what makes it fascist, because Bill Maher will acknowledge that that was fascist intent. And that's kind of what he's saying here, that some of the stuff Trump does is kind of fascisty, right? But because Trump hasn't successfully solidified one party fascist rule over America, although we do seem to be sliding closer in that direction, not that somebody like Bill Maher is going to be able to acknowledge that and call it for what it is, then, you know, what it is on the part of Trump is it's this refreshing honesty. So that's the part I don't get, is that if Trump is being honest with us and telling us exactly what is in his mind, and what comes out of his mouth is often quite dictatorial and fascistic and has led to his government carrying out actions that are fascistic, then why can we not apply that same 1 + 1 = 2 methodology to determining if Trump is a fascist? If he says it out loud and we know that the stuff he's saying is fascistic, then we can call him a fascist. Now, both of these guys know this, and specifically John Fetterman, his role here is to downplay Trump and to downplay the most noxious and the most searing parts of Trump. And the reason he's trying to do that is because his leverage exists in being able to side with them occasionally. So he doesn't have to do it all the time. And as he notes here, he often does vote with Democrats. But on the crucial issues where he doesn't, it is something that allows Republicans to continue operating the way they are. So he undermines the Democrats' leverage and hands Republicans the justification that they need in order to continue doing what they're doing. For example, the government shut down over Affordable Care Act subsidies, then it spirals into a fight over ICE, even though really those were separate shutdowns, but they kind of ended up getting tied together. In both of those instances, Fetterman's role, he felt, was to undermine the Democratic narrative for keeping the government shut down so that the government could remain open and under Republicans, pretty ubiquitous control. So that's Fetterman's role. Now the question is, what would happen going forward if Fetterman was to end up in the position where he's the deciding vote for Democrats? And this sort of simulation has been run where if things go favorably for Democrats and they pick up 4 Senate seats in the midterms, that would allow them to take control of the Senate by 1 vote. That 1 vote would be Fetterman. The reason he would be the 1 vote is because he would be the most likely to break from Democrats. So this both creates, a Manchin-like scenario for him where he would be Manchin and Sinema rolled into one. So very much a nightmare scenario, but also creates the conditions where he could switch parties. So that's where he's being courted. He apparently has made friends with a couple Republican senators that are working him and saying things to him like, oh, you're more popular with our base than we are. And the reason that's the case is because John Fetterman is going on Fox News and he's doing these hits against Democrats saying, I don't know why Democrats are saying this. I don't know why they're being like this about the ballroom. I don't know why they're being like this about the Iran war. What's up with these crazy Democrats? So that's popular with Republicans, not only because he's saying what they want to hear, but they perceive it as a Democrat saying what they want to hear. That does not mean that they would vote for him. They probably wouldn't. And this has happened before where, people have switched parties with the support of the president and even, the establishment of the party, and it did not go in their favor for the election. So we'll see. Fetterman doesn't really seem to be seriously considering that because he doesn't consider himself to be a Republican on the vast majority of issues. But clearly, he is using his political leverage. He's angling, and he's angling with leverage from the Republicans and maybe feels that he maintains more of that as a Democrat, not a Republican in some instances. Because if he becomes a Republican, then all of his other positions become an issue for them. Whereas with Democrats, it's only this thin margin where he is the deciding vote on things that are a real stick in the craw for Democrats. So, speaking of sticks in the craw, let's listen to this clip real quick of Fetterman on Bill Maher's actual show. This is the one that's been going viral of him struggling to get a coherent answer out about lab-grown meat. For whatever reason, they're even talking about that.
But you actually want a ban. Yeah, that doesn't seem.
Yeah, I just think as I'm a member of the Agriculture Committee, and I really stand with our farmers now. And now, of course, we don't want the factory farm situation. Absolutely opposed to animal cruelty. But for me, if I lived on Mars, those kinds of that kind of what's the lab meet would be a great opportunity. But for me right now, like it's.
But you want to ban it? I mean, shouldn't people have the right to eat it?
It's like actively. I mean, if people have a chance to for that, but overall, for me, I think someone that's really. I mean, we are just. I thought, the really highly processed food. I mean, that's exactly the essence of that.
Yeah, so Fetterman's brain is just kind of melting in slow motion. He's much less coherent here than he was even in the clips before where he's talking to Bill Maher. So it's moments like this where you can really see the deterioration in him. Although sometimes he does come across a little bit more coherent, it always has this like very thoughtless, straightforward, conservative type of angle. And that is the mindset of a lot of conservative people. Fetterman has even said that he feels like his mind works this way more ever since the stroke that he had. So I don't know, could be some evidence in the direction that brain injuries like that shut off certain parts of your brain. Because there is something to be said for the fact that people who are more left-leaning, more progressive, tend to be a little bit more creative and open-minded in their thinking, maybe a little bit more elaborate, whereas people who lean to the right are just more very straightforward. 1 + 1 = 2. You got Mexico, you got America, you need a border wall. Like it's a straightforward way of thinking. And I think Fetterman has defaulted more to that ever since his brain injury. Could there be a correlation there? I don't know. But it allows him to hide behind this kind of like fake, like lack of any type of analysis. Anything that Democrats do that is sort of a reasonable punch back in this Trump era where Democrats are just getting walloped and completely disempowered at every turn, gerrymandered off the map, etc. But of course, we have the Fettermans and the Bill Mahers of the world to remind us when Democrats go to do gerrymandering that gerrymandering is bad in general, which we know. But again, that's kind of the rhetorical purpose that they serve, is to keep Democrats in line, not really to criticize Republicans because they benefit from that sort of political capital. If they help the project of Republicanism in this current moment, then I think they predict that will pay dividends down the line. And you're still seeing this defensive posture from a lot of Democrats, even after this gerrymandering loss in Virginia. You're still seeing Spanberger and other Democrats that are speaking up saying they're not supporting this aggressive gerrymandering strategy, or even Spanberger saying that she does not support removing all of the Supreme Court justices in Virginia that overturned this map and then pushing it through again, which I think is what they should do. I think, most of the Democratic voter base thinks they should do that, as well as, the voters that voted for Spanberger specifically because she said she was going to be a fighter. But Democrats are succumbing to this environment where they feel like they are going to bear the full weight of any political liability of pushing back and doing the same type of things that Republicans do, whereas Republicans' approach is to just do it very fast. They do the thing fast and then they just eat the political cost. And every single time it ends up working out better for them and they just get to run away with it. So it does look like on this issue of Virginia, they're not going to do that, which is just a huge missed opportunity. And like I said, I think a lot of voters think that they should just take every advantage that they can and every opportunity to be on offense that they possibly can, especially in a situation like this. You don't start wheedling to the Supreme Court, asking them to intervene. The Supreme Court is ruling in favor of Republicans on every single gerrymandering issue. They're going to do the same thing here. So unless Democrats flex that they're willing to do something outside of the norm, outside of the rule book, then they're just going to keep losing perpetually. And of course, Fetterman is going to, speak up against them or say that Democrats shouldn't be doing stuff like that. But ultimately, Fetterman is probably going to go along with the political momentum anyway. Like, if Fetterman is not the deciding vote in the next Senate, but rather he is one of 2 or 3 Democrats who push the majority over the line, then he probably will be a lot less of a troublemaker because really he just likes the attention. And so if the attention that he's getting is not based on the fact that his vote is singularly important, he'll probably move to some other kind of maneuvering or find another way to be shocking or whatever, or just lose interest in politics completely. So truthfully, the worst case scenario for Democrats is allowing a guy like this to have too much political power, because he's just going to hand the wins to the Republicans over and over again. But not like that's all that different from the Democrats' platform anyway.